with the hour's news from Tigray TV. I'm Erin Imana, will be reading the news for you today. Stay tuned. Let's now proceed to the details. Abiy Ahmed's regime and its media outlets have worked tirelessly to draw a false image on Tigrayan forces in the hearts and minds of Ethiopians everywhere. But residents of Desse tell our reporters that their experience has been completely different. Betelem Ayela has more on this.
The Tigrayan armies that has been fiercely fighting the enemies that have been threatening the existence of people of Tigray have recently took control of Desse city, which is about 400 kilometers away from Addis Ababa. The residents of the city have told us that there have been relentless effort made by the regime in Addis Ababa to paint horrific image of the Tigrayan army as terrorists and torturers who indiscriminately kill people who they got on their ways.
አንድ ነገር ነው ግልጹኛ የምነግርህ ነገር አንድ የተጨበረበረው ነገር አለ እናንተ ከአማራ ህዝብ ጋር ምንም አይነቅም እንደሌላችሁ ነው አንድ ነገር ምንድነው በቃላት ማሽሞሞ እንደተሸወድን ነው በዚህ ባጭበርባሪ ሌባ መንግስት ተጨበርበረን እንዴት ነው ይሄው እንግዲህ የልፋታችሁ ዋጋ ነው አዎ ዳግመኛ ያንን ጀግና በሳት የተፈተነው ትውልድ ነው ያየነው
ስለመጣችሁ የተወራውን ሁሉ አላየንም በእናንተ ምን እንደምላችሁ አላውቅም እኛ ከምንለው በላይ መታችሁ መልካም ነገር አድርጋችኋል ሰዎች የሚያወርላችሁና እናንተ ሆናችሁ የምትገኙት የተለያየ ነው ስለዚህ በመምጣታችሁ ባጭሩ ደስተኛ ነው ለእናንተ ባለማረጋችሁ በጣም ይቅርታ ግን ያው ክብር ይገባችኋል አክብረናችኋል እግዚአብሔር ይስጥልን
አስማርሽ መልስ ባላስሚ በዚህ በደሴ ከተማ ተወልጄ ያደኩ ልጅ ነኝ ያው በቃ እናንተን ከናዚ በላይ እንደሆናችሁ አድርጎ ነበር ሲገልጽልን የነበረው ማለት ነው ሲጀመር አብይን እዚህ ፒያሳ ላይም ደሴ ፒያሳ ላይም አብይ ገዳይ ነው አብይ ህዝብ አስጨፍጫፊ ነው ይያልን ስንቃወም የነበርን ወጣቶች ነን ያርዳሉ ጡት ይቆርጣሉ ህፃናቶችን ወንድ ከሆነ ያጠፋሉ በጣም አስቀፋፊ ነገር ነበር ስንሰማ የነበረው እንደው ቢቻልን ያሁን ፍቃደኛ ነኝ በቃ ይሄ ሰራዊት ጋር ተቀላቅዬ በቃ እንዱ ከርቶኝ ይሄደኝን ሰው እኔም እንደመጣሁለት ባሳየው
እኛ የተወራልን ባንክ ይዘርፋሉ ቤት ሰብራሉ ነው እስኪ ዞር አርጋ አሳይልኝ እናንተ ይሄን ያያረጋችሁ እንዴ ነው እኛ እናንተ ማመን የሚከብድ እኔ ከናንተ ጎን ስለሌላው አይመለከተኝም እኔ ከናንተ ጎን ስራዬ ሹፌር ነው መግባት ካለብኝ ይገባለሁ ታዘዛችሁኝ ሁሉ ታዘዛል የኛ ሀገር ሚዲያ ግን ፍጹም ውሸታም በዚህ ማኑ ጨራቀናቸው ይገላሉ ይደፍራሉ ቤት ይዘርፋሉ እኔ ምንም አለየሁ
ገደላችሁ እንዴ አሁን እዚህ ያያናችሁ ዘረፋችሁ እንዴ የተባለው ነገር ውሸት ነው የትኛው ትምርት ቤት አቃጠላችሁ እስኪ ንገረኝ የትኛው ቢሰውን የጨፈጨፋችሁት ንገረኝ እስኪ አሬም እንደትናንቱ ለ83 ብሔረሰብ እንደምታስቡ የዓለም ህዝብ ያቃል ያችን ሰላም ማስቀጥሏት በቃ
Among the disinformations that people were told about the Tigrayan army is that it mercilessly killed, captured and injured soldiers. But the abandoned soldiers testified that members of the Tigrayan army are rather treating them.
እስከባቴሩ እናንተ ተወይዱ 3 ቀን ምግብ አልበላም 3 ቀን
ደስ ይላል ጥሎን ሄዱ ማለት ትክክለኛ ታጋይ ሆናችሁ እኛ ይዛችሁ ለማተዱ ብለን ጠይቀናችኋል ከዛ ያው አይሆንም
ዶናችን እንትን ይያሉ እንወስዳቸዋለን የባሶችን በተኝታችሁ ታዲያላችሁ ብለው አሁን በቀጥታው ሄዱ እነሱ
እኔ ዛሬ ሰው ሳየኑ ይሞታል ብዬ አስቤ ነበር ራሱ ለኔ በጣም የገጠመኝ ነገር ነው
እኔ አሁን እናንተ በቃ አስተባበራችሁን ተንባትሉ እነዚህ ከህመማቸው እንኳን ከስቃይ መታገስ አልቻሉም በጣም ነው ያዘንኩት ይሄ ሰባዊነት አይደለም ቢያንስ ይዘዋቸው ቢሄዱ ቀድሞ
በቃ አስጠያፊ ነው አሁን እዚህ ገብቼ አሁን እዚህ በማየው ነገር ያለ ሬሳ ያለ እንትን በቃ ቁስለኛ ምን ችግር አለው አንስቶ እንኳን ቢሄድ እኔ አብይ እዚህ ያሉ ሰራተኞቹ በጣም ጨካኙና አረሚኖች ናቸው ነው የምለው ምክንያቱም የሰው ልጅ ሬሳ ጥጥለው የሚሄዱ
ትግራይ ሰራዊት ነው እያስተባበረ ሬሳውን እየሸኘልን ያለው እኔ ባይኑ ቦታው ስላለው ማለት ነው ሬሳው የኛው የወታደሩ የአብይ ወታደር የብልጽግና ወታደር ማለት ነው
አሁን የትግራይ ሰራዊት እዚህ በጣም ከፍተኛ ነገር ያደረገው ሬሳውን እያስነሳ ነው እያስቀበረ ነው እንጀራ አስተባብሯቸው እንጀራ አንጡላቸው በቃ ይሄን አድርጉላቸው እያሉ እያስተባበሩ
አሁንም ማየት ይቻላል እየዘረፈ ያለው የራሱ የብልጽግና አባል ሆነ ነው እየመጣ እያዘረፈን ያለው ስለዚህ ወገኖች ነቅተን ራሳችንን እንጠብቅ አንድም የትግራይ ወታደር ደሴ ከገባበት ሰዓት ጀምሮ አይዟችሁ እናንተ እንዳንነካ ምንም አንነካም ተብለን በሰላም እየኖርን ነው
Yesterday we had a brief stay with historian Agazaw Kasa. Let's take a look at that.
Dese and Kombolcha are located in north central Ethiopia, and they are well placed in this area as economic hubs and demographic hubs, densely populated areas, and economically vibrant cities in northern Ethiopia, north central Ethiopia. And they connect just main routes to from Addis to Mekelle, Addis to no, just from Djibouti port to Bahar Dar, Mekelle, Addis, back to Addis, which means they connect almost basic key areas in northern Ethiopia, and they are well placed in this strategic, economically and politically, and well, even if you consider also military, the current military situation. So they are in strategically located in this area of what we call that north central Ethiopia. Especially Kombolcha is an industrial town, just in addition to that. And also these areas are also, the cities are also cosmopolitan, in a way, Ethiopian cosmopolitan cities. They are melting pots of different nations and nationalities and ethnic groups, religious groups, and social and cultural groups, and so many peoples from different regions of northern Ethiopia, from Tigray, Afar, including Amhara region. So they migrate to these areas as labor migrants, and they earn their living in these areas by actively engaging in these economic activities that are going on in these cities. So if you look into all these things, I think these cities are very strategically located. When we come to the military aspect of this, their strategic significance, during the 17-year-long armed struggle that the TPLF waged against the Derg regime, I think now people are making a parallelism between the earlier capture of Desse in May 1991 and the capture of Desse last week. The kind of battle that was going on in the area, as well as in the impact of the battle. By 1991, it is said that it's after the capture of Desse, that immediately after the capture of Desse, that Mengistu left Addis. So some are also expecting the same to happen by this time. Of course, this may or may not happen at this time, but there is some parallelism in it. But when we see it in military terms, of course, there are some differences too. Like, for instance, during the 17-year-long armed struggle, Desse was there was, of course, a huge concentration of troops in Desse by then, but there was a kind of recurrent fighting from late 1989 to the beginning of 1991, up to May 1991, and sometimes sporadic fighting, sometimes continual. But there was no decisive fighting in and around Desse by then. And Desse was liberated in one of the major operations that the EPRD forces launched to kick out Mengistu. That was the Operation Walaling. So the battle in and around Desse was one component, one battle, specific engagement in that huge operation, military operation, but it was not as decisive as we saw last week. The battle that we saw last week made Desse strategically more significant, especially in the current military process, because by then the backbone-breaking military offensive that was just waged against the Derg during the last days, the last months of Mengistu, it happened not in the direction of Desse, but in the direction of Gojam and Gondar. That was by way of Operation Theodros. in a fortnight, I think in the beginning of February, mid-February, in a fortnight, the PRD forces just captured about 5 or 7 provinces: North Gondar, South Gondar, West and East Gujam, Matakal. All these areas were captured in a single operation, but it was conducted in a vast area, covering these areas, and it just concluded within 2 weeks. So that was a backbone-breaking operation. That was broke the Turks and it completely offset the military balance, and the balance tipped in favor of the PRD forces. But at this time, the course of the war placed, let's say, more strategically significant than that was in 1991. This is because, one, the forces of Abiy and his cohorts amassed a huge army formations in and around Dessie. Two, they made it a symbol of resistance, not only in military terms, but also in propaganda and political, economic, and everything. And it was considered as a step, a springboard, even to recapture Mekelle. So at this time, Dessie became a single important site, a battlefield that will decide whether this situation was going to be successful or not, whether the Abiy's plan was of recapturing Tigray and destroying the Tigrayan forces was going to be successful or not, was going to be decided in Dessie. So this made Dessie even more militarily significant.
The Tigray External Affairs Office released a statement rejecting the findings of joint investigation conducted by the United Nations and the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, a state-appointed body regarding the human rights violation in Tigray. The statement reads that the involvement of the Ethiopian human rights body raised serious questions about the partiality of the investigation and its findings, saying that the Ethiopian Commission and its commissioner repeatedly used government's talking points as means to cover up atrocities committed by the Ethiopian forces in Tigray. The statement also rejects flawed methodology used in the report as well as its limited geographical coverage, and stated that the government's willingness to participate in an independent and internationally led investigation. Adigrat University Students' Union requested for the reinstatement and university budget and the recommencement of the education. The statement explained that the university had held several discussions with the Ministry of Science and Higher Education, MSHE, on July 2021, in which the ministry had established the students would return to the campus in 45 days and classes would resume. But students are yet to return after over 4 months of discontinued education. The student union condemned the escalation of the conflict and repeated calls to arm by the Ethiopian government that has led to senseless death of many youth. The statement also asked that the Union for the Ethiopian Students in Higher Education and the African University Students Union to play their role in becoming a voice to Tigrayan students. It's been a year since the Ethiopian government started to profile and arbitrarily arrest Tigrayans in Addis Ababa, as well as other parts of Ethiopia. Following a spike in hate speech against Tigrayans this past weekend, the Ethiopian government has also recently issued a state of emergency that will surely be used to further detain and abuse Tigrayans living in different parts of Ethiopia. Reporter Fani Lemuru has more.
It's been a year since the Ethiopian government started to ethnically profile and arrest Tigrayans in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. This past weekend, media personalities closely associated with the Ethiopian and Eritrean government have called for Ethiopians of Tigrayan origin to be taken into concentration camps.
Urgent message to the government. It is not too late. It is necessary to enter every one of Tigrayans to descend, even if they have no connection to TPLF, in temporary camps. During the Second World War, the United States was able to win the war against the invading Japanese forces and Hitler army only after entering all Japanese citizens living in the country in camps. Ethiopia is now in more imminent danger. It is widely believed that the main actors in the struggle for Desse are TPLF supporters among the people. It is impossible to win the war with them in our midst. This step should be taken urgently, including for their own safety.
This repeated call for the unlawful detention of Tigrayans across Ethiopia was followed by the Ethiopian government issuing a state of emergency that would allow the state to arbitrarily detain citizens as well as search and confiscate private property.
ምክንያታዊ በሆነ መንገድ የጠረጠረውን ምክንያታዊ በሆነ መልክ የጠረጠረውን ማንኛውንም ሰው
If any police office should find any person reasonably suspect, that officer has the full authority to detain or search the suspect without a court order, may seize any weapon even if it were legally obtained.
One resident of Addis Ababa that spoke to BBC said that she was frightened to speak her native language and says she knows 25 Tigrayans that have been detained, 3 of which were her family members.
3 members of my family and more than 25 people I know are imprisoned. The worst part is we can't even visit them because they detain visitors.
Another resident that wanted to remain anonymous that Ethiopian authorities would arbitrarily arrest people with Tigrayan names. One DPA reporter observed 2 vehicles carrying ethnic Tigrayans, with some of them shouting, "What did we do? We're innocent." In its report released on August 18, Human Rights Watch has recorded the mass, arbitrary detention of Tigrayans, forceful disappearance and abuse of Tigrayans across Ethiopia. Commander Fasika Fanta, spokesperson for Addis Ababa Police Commission, admitted to the targeted arrest of Tigrayans in the capital, saying,
"We are mainly detaining Tigrayans, but that doesn't mean it's only them that we are imprisoning."
Since November 4, when the Ethiopian government started an all-out offensive on the people of Tigray, millions of people have been displaced, thousands of children separated from their families, and many dead due to lack of medication, food, and other essentials. Mekelle is home to nearly 170,000 internally displaced persons that now find themselves on the brink of death as food stocks are depleted and the Ethiopian government maintains a siege on Tigray, discontinuing all public services and blocking essential goods, including food, aid, and medical supplies. Our reporters were at Duhun Elementary School to speak with the IDPs about how the current crisis has affected them. Abil Zagao has more.
UN OCHA estimates there are over 2.2 million internally displaced persons in Tigray, of which over 1 million were displaced due to the large-scale ethnic cleansing campaign by Amhara militia in Welkait, in the western part of Tigray, while an additional million were displaced due to a gross violation of human rights, denial of access to basic public services such as medical care, water, communication, and other essentials. Duhun Elementary is one of many schools in Mekelle sheltering IDPs. They say they had largely depended on the host community to provide them with basics such as food and clothes. But the situation has become more dire since the end of June, with the start of the siege on Tigray that has meant that every household is in dire condition.
We were all right. The residents of Mekelle provided us with food and clothes. They welcomed us. They gave us floors. We were very good, and we were eating. However, now it has been 2 months. We were breathing just because God wills it, not because we have eaten.
There is hunger, there is starvation. All these children here, they didn't have breakfast, lunch, or dinner since the start of the blockade. Even if the world wanted to help the children in need, every road into Mekelle has been blocked. We are in a difficult situation. Those who are sick cannot get treatment. Those who are hungry cannot get food. we are in a difficult situation.
The people of Maqala welcomed us. They feed us before they feed themselves. They feed our children before their own children. They gave us their clothes. They were helping us in any way they could. But now we are in a difficult situation. Patients with chronic disease are not getting treatment. The elderly are in need of assistance and we are in danger.
Coordinator for the IDP Center, Emmanuel Hailemariam, says that the IDPs are in danger of dying due to lack of food and called on local and international aid organizations to provide urgent assistance.
We have 1,275 people here. I call on the international community to condemn the genocide being carried out on the people of Tigray.
The United Nations has announced that over 400,000 people in Tigray are in famine-like condition, while over 5 million are in need of emergency assistance.
Tigray External Affairs Office released its weekly briefing on Tuesday, discussing the overall humanitarian condition in Tigray and the aerial bombardments of Mala. The office announced that no food aid had entered Tigray in over 2 weeks, exacerbating an already dire humanitarian catastrophe that has left over 5 million people in need of emergent food assistance.
Tigray External Affairs Office in its weekly brief announced that no humanitarian trucks have entered Tigray since October 18, completely halting what very little humanitarian aid was trickling into Tigray. The External Affairs Office said this clearly proves that Abiy Ahmed's government is using starvation as a weapon of war. The brief also noted that nutrition partners have scaled back their operations due to shortage of cash. The situation has also exacerbated since UNHAS has stopped its twice-weekly flight to Maqala. Thus, malnutrition among pregnant and lactating women remains alarmingly high at 51.7%. The brief warns that if the international community fails to beef up its responses, the obstruction of aid by Abiy's government will lead to a humanitarian catastrophe that has not been seen in decades. The briefing also states that the aerial bombardment of Maqala that started on October 18 have exclusively targeting civilians and civilian property, indicating that airstrike on October 28 was the deadliest, killing 12 people and wounding over 40 others, and called on the international community to go beyond expressing concern and take serious decision to compel the genocidal government to change course.
The Kunama communities are a pastoralist society with a rich cultural heritage living in northwestern Tigray. According to the recent assessments on integrated food security phase classification, the area is categorized at a high risk for famine, with much of its population categorized under IPC 4 and 5. Reporter Aragawi has more on this.
The Kunama are a pastoralist society with a rich cultural heritage found in northwestern Tigray and Eritrea. They are listed as a minority group and benefit from protections listed under Ethiopia's 1995 constitution that gives them special representation in the Ethiopian Parliament and Tigray State Council. After the war broke in Tigray, Eritrean troops invaded their community and looted and destroyed their property. Now, as the siege on Tigray continues and basics such as food aid and medical supplies are blocked, the community finds itself depending on unusual plants as means of fending off starvation.
We are starving. If we are somehow able to serve breakfast for our children, then they have to skip lunch and dinner. We are giving them small chunks of bread and a lot of cooked sharps. Our community, the Kunama, had always lived a life of subsistence, but we've never experienced such hunger. Everything we had, our properties, our livestock, was all looted by Eritrean troops. We have nothing left but our life now. The Kunama used to eat different kind of roots during the time of famine, but nowadays we can't search for those as we are forced to leave our local residence. As a result, we are eating shrubs that we find around us in desperation.
We were displaced from our home because of Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki. Our livestock and property were looted by Eritrean troops, so now we have nothing and are starving to death.
The IPC Global Product conducted a study in 2 clusters in northwestern Tigray from May to June 2021. According to the study, 8 areas from the 2 clusters were found in IPC4, and while 50% of the population was found in IPC5, which is the last and most dire stage on the famine classification system. The Kunama Society describes their dire situation as follows.
We were displaced from our home because of Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki. Our livestock and property were looted by Eritrean troops, so now we have nothing and are starving to death.
Members of the community say they have only received 2 rounds of food aid in the past year.
We are not able to get shelter, food, or clean drinking water. The elderly and children are exposed to different types of illness. We ask that the world help us. We are starving.
According to local administration of Tahtay Adiabo, Gabrayot Kidu, more than 86,000 people are in need of immediate humanitarian aid in this district alone.
Because of the ongoing blockade of humanitarian aid, there are 27,000 households or 86,000 people in need of emergency assistance and 500 already starving. This is just in our district.
The Kunama community is a culturally rich and historically significant community in Tigray, but now finds itself in fear of extinction if the siege on Tigray should continue.
We had to stay with an expert on this matter. Let's take a look at that.
Our food sources were confiscated by the marauders, and again the thing which was remained from the confiscation was used by them. And not only that, again the food crops were mixed with other extraneous agents, with other foreign bodies, like mixing into mud, into ashes, into other non-edible things. And again, other problem happened to the harvest of the people of Tigray, it was burned. Our animals, our livestock were killed or ransacked or looted. All these things cumulatively caused the people of Tigray to remain out of anything to eat for about 1 year, solid 1 year. Then as a result, what is really happening is people are dying again due to lack of food. They do not have even a mouthful of food in their home. Then people are being emaciated in all walks of their life again, starting from the children up to the elderly. Not only that, again, pregnant moms are getting malnourished. As a result, they are giving birth to newborns with congenital anomalies, or they give birth to neonates who are dead already, or they get abort their pregnancies. You see the consequence. Then in all the walks of their life, in all the life cycle of the people of Tigray, there is total absence of food. Then this results in total emaciation of the people, the occurrence of severe acute malnutrition, which is around 3 to 4 fold when it is compared before the occurrence of the war. Then as a result, currently the worst stage of starvation, which have never been seen in the world even before. You see, this is what is happening for us due to total absence of food items for the people of Tigray. Currently people are eating wild shrubs which are not traditionally edible, and even which are harmful for our health, but fearing the death of their family member, they are attempting to eat wild leaves at this time. You see, this is the consequence, and it has again its own psychological and physical disadvantages eating such kinds of shrubs. Everyone is dying because there is no money to buy food items, and even there is no food item to buy again. So you see, all these are the consequences we have. So it's beyond starvation, it's beyond famine for us. Already reported by the international agencies, around 5.2 to 6.3 million people are in dire condition due to lack of food items. It is repeatedly reported, and again many children, in hundreds of children, are dying due to lack of even a mouthful food item to eat in their home. And not only that, again, moms are in despair condition due to lack of food to serve for their family, and they are committing suicide due to that problem too. And all in all, this problem is beyond famine. This problem is an extermination due to man-made hunger to the people of Tigray. This is an annihilation. But about it, the international community knows. But I wonder why it is silent on its actions. What kind of advantage it is waiting for?
And with that, we're going to wrap up this edition of Tigray Today. I'm Mary from Tigray. Thank you for tuning in to Tigray TV.